In Counter-Strike, getting unlucky is extremely common. Shot was clearly on him, guess not. Bad timing, happens to everyone. With a spray, this has been going on for generations. Die behind a wall, not in my game. Getting unlucky is genuinely a major factor in Counter-Strike, and more often than not, these events usually mean nothing in the grand scheme of things. But what happens when you are getting consistently unlucky? What happens when you have a great team but can't figure it out when it matters most? When every lead feels like a score tied? When every final you've reached feels so far away? What happens when after years of dedication and hardships, the highest peak your continent has ever seen and your moment to finally shine was nothing more than an era thwarted conveniently by the greatest team to ever live? At what point do you realize that you're cursed? Dramatics aside, let me introduce you to our protagonist, Team Liquid. They have been around for a while, not for like 1.6 or anything like that, but still a decade at this point and have experienced a lot of turmoil, and I mean a lot. In this first video of a two-part series, I'm going to go over the history of Team Liquid, their ups, mostly downs, their historical peak, and by the end of it, you'll see exactly what I mean when I say this team is absolutely cursed. So before I can talk about where they're at now, we need to go back. Back to 2015, the year Counter-Strike Global Offensive saw its largest rise in player counts. Team Liquid entered the Counter-Strike scene at the start of the year, signing a team of Adren, Fugly, Naf, and Nitro, who had been playing for a whopping 5 days under the Chill Guys banner. They had played for Denial Esports to end the previous year, but seemed to mutually part ways with the organization in the first week of 2015. The departure would become clear days later when Joker Steve announced the roster's full-time signing for Team Liquid. This represented a step up for the team of 5. Team Liquid had already established themselves as a premier esports org, having fielded Tier 1 professional teams in titles like Dota 2, StarCraft, and League for years at this point. This roster would have the support and funding to focus on the game full-time, something that few North American Counter-Strike teams could boast at this period. This roster would have their might tested at ClutchCon 2015, where for some reason the best team in the world, Fnatic, are the only European team present in a long list of NA teams, and kaboom. Liquid would get their shit absolutely rocked by the world number 1, losing 16-1 and 16-3 respectively, which is only a slightly worse performance compared to the finalists Cloud9, who lost 16-7 and 16-1. Shout out to Fallen's Kaboom for being the only team to take a map off Fnatic at this event. To this day, I have no idea why Fnatic were at this event. Anyway, the founding Team Liquid roster would be put to the test yet again as they faced off against real competition at the Katowice 2015 qualifier and finished dead last at the hands of Flipside and MSL's Copenhagen Wolves. As you can see, 2015 for Liquid was a time of preparation and first steps. Naf is currently the most tenured player on Team Liquid Counter-Strike, but 3 months into the year, he'd be benched for a 17-year-old up-and-comer named Elige, a name that will soon become synonymous with the team. Team Liquid would participate in the Face It League Stage 1 North America, where they started the games with Naf and ended them with Elige, who was subbed out somewhere in between the tournament. Despite the roster change, they would steamroll the competition in this event, going a whopping 8-2 and only losing games to Cloud9's Shroud and Elevate's Hiko. These wins would earn them a direct invite to the Face It League 2015 finals, where rookie Elige would have his first opportunity to play against top-tier opponents. And play is absolutely all they did, because they got walked by Fnatic 16-3 and 16-1, again, the exact same scoreline as last time, and lose a very close best-of-3 to Australian Immunity. This game against Immunity would be one that nobody remembers, a drop in the bucket of Counter-Strike matches that have been played since the dawn of time, but upon closer inspection, this match would be the first symptom of there being something off with this team. In the game against Team Immunity, Team Liquid would out of nowhere let go of a 12-6 lead and go on to lose the game 13-16, a sign of something like divine intervention that only benefits the opposing team. All of a sudden, nothing works for them. Every execute, every peak, every retake, every team fight. Nothing goes their way anymore. And this would only be the first of many. That year, Liquid would also shuffle in Flowsick, who would be given the great honor of allowing Cloud9 to come back from a 12-3 deficit during the ESL Pro League to beat them 16-13. But that's not all. Once again in ESL Pro League, Liquid would have an 11-4 lead against Team Affinity, which too ended in a 16-13 loss. These signs were not looking great for Liquid, so Flowsick would eventually get replaced by Hiko, who at the time was an already established North American star known for his lurking and anchor ability on Cloud9, Liquid's bitter NA rivals. Hiko's time on Complexity and Cloud9 had been followed by a slew of lower tier NA teams after the iBuyPower Hiko was going to join collapsed as they were being investigated by Valve for match fixing. He was still playing great during this period, boasting a 1.12 rating for the year, but was just merely existing on teams like Elevate and Nihilium before permanently joining Team Liquid after standing in for Flowsick. What seemed like a direct upgrade to Liquid ended up being just that, as they would win 2 online events against the soon-to-be scary Luminosity Gaming in a best-of-5 and a best-of-3 respectively. And they even qualified for the major in Cluj-Napoca after beating Renegades with Sponge in 2 different best-of-3s, which despite the silly format, came with an omen of its own when Team Liquid had another 11-2 lead on Cobblestone that slowly evaporated until they eventually lost 16-14. Even with Hiko, it seems they can't escape the curse. At the major in Cluj-Napoca, they'd bomb out in groups after 2 very close maps against the vastly superior Virtus Pro and NIP, but making the major was a massive step in the right direction. In Team Liquid's debut year, one of their best performances would come at Iem San Jose, where they beat a floundering Virtus Pro with Mihu 2-0 very convincingly, but once again, with a 14-7 lead in the semis against Navi, do or die on map 2, they ended up losing round after round until they were eliminated from the tournament 16-14. Liquid had performed decently in NA for their first year and even won some online events, but besides one best of 3 win versus Virtus Pro at Iem San Jose, they failed to perform at big LAN events versus top European teams. Let me be clear, this wasn't unusual for NA teams at the time. CLG fared similarly this year, and even a widely celebrated All-American Cloud9 team peaked in a second place LAN finish at the first season of EPL. Not that impressive at all. Team Liquid knew that if they were going to leave an impact at these big international tournaments, they'd have to look east of America.
Drop me my op.
I need help, simple.
Drop me op, please.
Oh, worst teammate ever.
Not many people remember this, but originally Team Liquid had offered the Finnish sniper Alu the 5th spot going into 2016. He eventually decided to stay in Finland to lead a young Finnish roster with Ents, which laid the way for Ukrainian teenager Simple to join up with Nitro, Hiko, Alige, and Adren. Now this may seem like an incredibly random move looking back at it now, and let me assure you that it made even less sense back then. The story behind how this happened was that months prior, before joining Liquid himself, Hiko stood in for Simple's team Flipside at ESWC 2015 when World Edit had visa issues. They'd make it to the semifinals, even besting NIP 2-1 in the playoffs. During this period, Hiko and Simple became the unlikeliest of friends and were doing everything they possibly could together. Getting ice cream, watching movies, playing Counter-Strike. I just know they were doing that one together. Now with Liquid's eyes on the first CSGO major held in NA, Hiko called on Simple to be their primary opper, and the community universally noted 2 things about the transfer: Simple's raw skill compared to NA players, and his impact on Team Liquid's chemistry.
Peter, why you... what he's doing? Why you bully me?
Fans had good reason to worry, as Simple had a controversial year in 2015.
Nice, Simple, man.
Shut up, you fucking old.
He began the year going viral on CS Reddit for saying some offensive things, prompting backlash from the community and established pro players. Threads floated around on Reddit providing chat logs of Simple at the time on Hellraisers asking fans to gift him skins and not returning them. To end 2015, Simple publicly and angrily announced that he would not play with the Flipside lineup as it stood, eviscerating his teammates on social media for poor performance and mistakes, saying, quote, "I just don't know how you cannot do simple stuff when you've been playing CS for so long," and promptly left the team. After which, former teammate Markeloff told reporters that he was fighting and arguing with teammates constantly, and when asked about his departures, said, quote, "I do feel really awesome that he left. We all feel much better. Now we can concentrate on our personal and team game instead of fighting with a toxic kid." And underlying all of this was a 2013 ban from ESL for cheating on an alt account, which had been extended years because of ban evasion. This ban was set to expire in February of 2016, but overall, Simple's questionable antics and flat-out toxicity made him a risk for teams to pursue. In the same year, Simple would proclaim himself #NewSimple as he vowed to never be toxic again. And a CS channel called The Fun Share would start what would become a 55-part series of Simple stream highlights to make sure that he was in fact done being toxic. It is still being debated to this day whether NewSimple was truly NewSimple, but one thing is for sure, he was definitely trying.
Thank you for game, Dumas.
Thank you, simple.
Really nice to play with you. You're playing like fucking bitch.
Out of all the things you could say about Simple at this time, what was unquestionable was Simple's raw mechanical skill. Although facing weaker competition than other premier European players in 2015, Simple's stats matched up with the likes of legends like Nico, Guardian, and JW. He surpassed JW's rating that year and nearly matched his op kills per round as a secondary opper for Flipside. His rating was on par with Nico and Guardian, who both had incredible years in Tier 2 and Tier 1 competition respectively. Fans of the community looked on this move with disdain, seeing Simple as just another Tier 2 EU player who wouldn't be able to translate his good performance to the Tier 1 stage. Speaking of translation, he'd also require English lessons in order to communicate with the team. Communication will become a big theme this year. So Simple would begin his NA training arc where we were blessed with oh so many Rank S and FPL streams that gave us wonderful moments like these. Liquid began the year with a string of online qualifiers garnering mixed results, but more importantly discovering that their choking habits have in fact not gone anywhere with the addition of Simple. During Gfinity Season 9 against Optic Gaming on Train, they would have a staggering 15-3 lead, and little did Nitro know, but this fight lost against Rush would be the beginning of the end, snowballing a 12-round comeback where Liquid would lose 17-19 in overtime. Teams against Liquid just magically start playing better, winning 1v1s and peaking with confidence. I mean, look at this 1v1 between Hiko and Shazam. Never in my life have I seen Hiko this scared and panicky in a clutch situation, and it's against Shazam of all players. The curse only grows stronger, it seems. Liquid did, however, show up when they needed to in the offline qualifier for MLG's Columbus Major. Even more surprisingly, it was 4 Americans pushing them over the line in their decider best of 3 against Simple's former team, Hellraisers. Hiko dropped a 1.41 over 3 maps to clinch the team's major berth, while Simple dropped an absolute stinker, going -21 against his former teammates and broke into tears at his own performance. It was an emotional affair for Simple, who had made his first of many majors, and he had this to say about the close series.
I was like lurker and I don't do anything, like support player, and I feel that we're gonna lose. There was time when I was on tilt, and after this last kill, I was so happy.
You got it, buddy.
Because Hellraiser's footbed.
The first months of 2016 hadn't been without their turmoil. In February, after a poor showing at the Katowice qualifiers, Adren was benched for Kusta, who would take the main op role. This swap would work out for the DreamHack Malmo qualifiers, as Liquid had a perfect bracket to secure one of NA's 2 spots for the event. By the end of the week, Liquid had confirmed that Adren would have to take Kusta's spot for the major qualifier, as Kusta had already played in a preliminary qualifier with his previous team. In an interview with Launders before the MLG Columbus Major, Hiko shared a little bit about the team environment since Simple had joined, particularly his poor attitude towards worst performing teammates when he fragged out. Simple and Adren particularly didn't see eye to eye, and arguments got worse and worse, precipitating the Kusta move. Since then, Liquid had been playing scrims and online qualifiers with Kusta, only introducing Adren days prior to the tournament. When they began playing with Adren again, the same issues came up, and the Team Liquid players hoped that in-person practice would help address the toxic environment. In April, North America's first major in CSGO boasted 4 different American teams qualifying for the group stages. It seemed if there was any time for a North American roster to make a miracle run, this would be the weekend. In their group stage matches, Team Liquid was firing on all cylinders. Back-to-back impact performances from Adren, plus stellar scorelines from Nitro and Simple, carried them past FaZe and an on-fire Fnatic roster. Fnatic had won the last 6 LANs they attended, but they were no match for Simple, who dropped 37 in double overtime, including 18 op kills and 9 first bloods. Somehow, the only 2 NA teams to advance would draw each other in the quarterfinals, and Simple dog-walked CLG, dropping 51 over 2 maps with a 1.5 rating to boot. They finally had secured top 4 at a major, a goal that Elise spoke about before the event. Their performance against Luminosity proved this to be no fluke either. With a 15-9 lead on Mirage, they were bound to claim map 1, and no matter what happens now, Team Liquid had surpassed everyone's expectations.
Once
Right?
again, the first base is Adren. He's going to hit the ground there as Cold. Oh, what? A jumping double from Cold! What is going on right now? How does he do this? Cold has saved Luminosity with the all-play. Unthinkable scenes there on the B apart. This family will spot Taco, but that's it. Luminosity with a comeback from 15-10. An amazing play from Cole with the AWP.
Well, with a 15-6 lead on Cash, surely they're destined to at least take it to map 3, right? Right, guys?
And there it is, Cold is going to take his head off, and Luminosity will find themselves in the grand finals against Na'Vi.
In what was one of the most heartbreaking losses in major history, Team Liquid's curse had caught up to them at the worst time and managed to choke not only a 6-round lead on map 1, but also a 9-round lead on map 2 immediately after to lose the series and get eliminated from the tournament. Cold Zera's jumping up 4K remains as one of the most incredible moments in Counter-Strike history, not just because of the absurdity of the shots themselves, but because it was the catalyst for Team Liquid's imprecation that took the life out of the best run this team has ever seen up until this point. Luminosity would go on to make history. They'd become the first Brazilian team to win a major in CSGO, and for Liquid, well, they'd be met with a last place finish at DreamHack Malmo at the hands of Tai Lu, and now Simple wants to go back home. Great job, guys. Liquid would once again have to field Adren, and this team with him and Kusta had decent placings at DreamHack Austin and the EPL Season 3 finals. They looked quite good in their game against NIP at EPL, where they would build up an impressive and dominant 14-2 lead on Dust 2. But then they would proceed to lose 4 rounds in a row, grab one back. Come on, guys, this is still so winnable. And just like that, the game was tied. In overtime, they finally had no more pressure on them, so they finally won 3 consecutive rounds in a row, once again landing on match point before proceeding to lose the next 7 rounds in a row. After such a long game, you have to wonder how their backs are feeling. Gamers have it rough, and as you may know, I'm something of a gamer myself. So on top of the hours I spend editing and writing scripts, I'm spending every other spare moment being a gamer, gaming at my desk. That's at least 12 hours a day, and I think the way my chair looks is a testament enough to that fact. It's actually falling apart, and I'm not even exaggerating when I say that no one would take it for free if I left it downstairs in the lobby. So you can imagine my joy when Flexispot reached out to me to sponsor this video. I received a brand new C7Max, and unlike my old chair, RIP, the C7Max is fully adjustable. It features a 3D headrest, which I like to adjust forward and down to actually support my neck. The backrest height is adjustable too, super helpful because I'm 6'1" and my girlfriend is 5'7", but this chair fits either of us comfortably. My posture is pretty terrible, so I really needed a chair with actual lumbar support and not just some sad little pillow strapped to the back. The C7Max is built with ergonomics in mind, and it's actually helping me sit straight for once. The 5D armrests also let you fine-tune the angle, height, forward and back, you name it. Whether I'm typing, editing, or losing 1v3s, I can lock in a comfy setup. The seat depth is also adjustable, so if you're like me and like to twist up in a pretzel when you're gaming, then this chair is perfect for you. Sit your butt in the 0.2-foot latex seat cushion for 12 plus hours. Take a nap in it. Meditate in it. Rest your footsies in it. Yes, it has a footrest. I actually pulled it out and took a nap on this thing the other day. Genuinely, this chair has been a game changer for me, and I'm really excited to work with Flexispot to bring you guys a discount. Click the link in my description and use the code C750 to get $50 off your chair. And if you have a limited budget, you can actually check out their C5 155 chair. It has equally good build quality with basic functions for adjustments as well. Flexispot has also recently launched a new chair model, the C7 Morpher, which features a complete upgrade to the lumbar support and upper backrest. They have a 30-day return policy and a 10-year warranty with direct replacement for damaged parts, so it's literally risk-free. Thanks again to Flexispot for sponsoring this video and saving me from getting back surgery 5 years down the line. Now let's get back into things. 10 days later, during week 7 of ECS North America, they faced off against Cloud9, and after losing map 1, got off to a hot start on Dust 2, building a strong lead 14-8. And yeah, I'm just gonna cut the bullshit. They lost 8 rounds in a row, 14-16. Yet another embarrassing last place finish at E-League Season 1. They wouldn't win a single map in any of the matches they played, alongside 2 more chokes. One against Luminosity, leading 12-2 and losing 14-16, and again versus Renegades with Sponge, where Liquid promptly showed this graphic on stream while Team Liquid still held their 11-4 lead before shortly thereafter losing the game 14-16.
This is reality. It's not a nightmare.
Yeah, but there has to be a parallel universe somewhere where there's a Liquid team that always wins 16-14. It's just not this one.
Amidst this bad news, Team Liquid finally had a flash of hope. Simple said, "I'm back," but only for ECS and ESL Cologne. The week following this extremely hyped announcement, Team Liquid traded Kusta to CLG for JDM and signed Pimp as Simple's replacement after Cologne. Their showing at ECS Season 1 finals left much to be desired, especially with Simple dropping a stinker like this. And a day after the 4th of July, the Americans allied with Eastern European forces and marched into Germany to do some serious damage. In-game, of course. In Counter-Strike. With different Liquid players top-ranking each group stage match, it was clear they weren't there so Simple could just 1v5 the entire game. Starting the weekend, Simple showed off against his compatriots, dropping a cool 67 kills on Navi to clinch their second major semi-final berth of the year. It genuinely couldn't be worse for most of the Navi members. Most of them. A great performance from Elige and a montage caliber series for Simple against heavy favorites Fnatic saw them advance to the finals in the Cathedral of Counter-Strike for their second decent shot at a major title. Simple's 1v2 against Fnatic and on-fire aggression would be his prominence redeeming moment after the catastrophe at MLG Columbus that nobody would ever forget. But against the world's best team with coldzera in MVP form for yet another major, Liquid stood no chance in the finals. None of them played well, but Simple had a particularly rough performance, barely breaking 20 kills in 2 maps. I wonder where I've seen this one before. And just as quick as he came, he left. Simple was with Liquid on and off for 8 months and brought them the farthest any North American team had come in a CSGO major tournament twice. Before his departure, Simple single-handedly hoisted Liquid up 9 spots on the HLTV Top 20 from 18th to the 9th best team in the world. Having proved himself on the international stage, Simple signed a deal with Navi to replace Zeus, and Liquid would end the year fielding a roster of Nitro, Elige, Hiko, JDM, and Pimp. Let's see how this team holds up with the Pimp Meister. Their first event is a smaller one, the CyberPower PC Summer 2016 Pro Series. Hell of a name they coined there. Liquid would get their immediate revenge against Luminosity, who proved themselves to only be good at major tournaments, and then would lose to Cloud9 in the finals, but overall not that bad of a performance. Their next event would be the E-League Season 2 qualifiers. This should be a walk in the park. Here they smashed through E-United, including a 16-1 victory on a map, and then they'd face off against Echo Fox. Should be no problem. Map 1 was a little closer than expected, and then they'd lose map 2. Come on, guys. It's Echo Fox, Sean Garez, Shazam, Roka, Rix, and Freakazoid. Seriously, lock in on map 3. 12-4, now that's more like it. Of course this happens to them against Echo Fox. You're losing 1v3s to Rix. Dude, we can't be serious. Surprisingly, after a performance like that, Liquid would still come decently close to a title at ESL New York 2016 off the back of an Elige masterclass, ultimately losing in 3 maps to Navi in the semis, where our friend Simple would go on to claim his first career MVP of many.
He's gonna throw the AWP in. Oh my god! Simple! What is happening?
What even is that?
But besides that, Liquid had no motion for the rest of the year, getting knocked out in the group stages of EPL Season 4 Finals and IEM Oakland. To round out 2016, Liquid ended the year the only way they knew how. At IEM Oakland, they'd play G2 and be up 11-4 on Nuke, then swiftly lose the game 19-17 despite Elige's best efforts. Then again 12-4 against Cloud9 at ECS Season 2 North America, losing the game 14-16, and in the same event 2 weeks later against Optic Gaming, 12-3 lead gets wiped away until they lose the game 13-16. However, questions about Liquid's longevity without Simple had already emerged, and the team decided to end the year investing in their game, picking up 2-time major winning coach Zeus from Brazilian powerhouse SK. Liquid at this time had a record of pretty unimpactful coaches. For a while, Joka Steve was listed as a coach, and no disrespect to him, he just wasn't as accomplished or experienced as, say, Astralis' Zonic or Navi's Starix. Liquid needed a strong leader, and Zeus would be the first TL coach coming in with CSGO titles under his belt. Having developed young Brazilian talent into a back-to-back major winning team with Fallen, he looked to do the same here with Liquid. There was just one issue. Who is going to IGL? Since Once the turmoil with Adren and Simple had started, Liquid had trialed other players in the IGL slot, eventually settling on Hiko. But in late 2016, Valve handed down a ruling that limited heavily when coaches could communicate with their players during matches, thereby heavily raising the stock of IGLs who could frag with their teammates. Hiko hadn't joined Liquid to lead this team, and it was clear that they lacked the big game calls against powerhouse IGLs like Fallen and Kerrigan. A plan of succession had to be crafted, and without Zeus taking the brunt work of strategizing and holding the team together, things were looking bleak for the Americans and Pimp. Liquid's need for a dedicated IGL was clear after the first major of 2017, E-League Atlanta. Falling to the eventual winners Astralis 16-3 in the Swiss stage, they failed to make the playoffs, a drastic change from the year prior. They'd also choke a 15-8 lead against Renegades at DreamHack Masters Las Vegas qualifiers, losing the game 19-22. But a few weeks into the new year, Liquid found their answer in the Great White North, adding Stanislaw, who had come off a pretty hot year IGLing Optic, winning Northern Arena Montreal and E-League Season 2. At the time, it was a mystery who he would be replacing, but days later, the team announced the departure of Hiko. His T-side lurking style that flourished in the early days of CSGO was just no longer viable with the death of the role in the professional scene. As teams' protocols and team play evolved, the lurker role had become more exploitable and situational, with similar players like Get Right changing his playstyle in his latter years. With a break before their next LAN in April, Liquid decided to make another move, benching Pimp and signing Twists, who had an impressive 1.10 in 2016 with TSM and Tier 2 NACS. The community was excited about this new lineup of Elige, Nitro, Stan, Twists, and JDM, and after a year under the crucible of Tier 1 CS with Simple, Liquid was determined to make it back to the top with a fully North American roster. The last major of the year, PGL Krakow, was 3 months away, and they had a string of online qualifiers, leagues, and offline events to prepare. Unfortunately, week in and week out, Liquid's results were less than stellar, and it was clear the system they were trying to assemble just wasn't working. They even got knocked out by Stanislaw's former team Optic with fucking Jason R 2 tournaments in a row at the iBuyPower Invitational 2017 Spring, where they played with Hazed instead of Twists, and also CS Summit, where even with their full roster, it wasn't enough to stop Jason R. That's so embarrassing. Besides a 3rd and 4th finish at the EPL Season 5 finals, they'd come into the Krakow offline qualifier, a top 10 team in the world, but with a string of 5th to 8th place finishes. Somehow, Liquid found a way to perform even more poorly, losing to 3 teams outside the top 15 and missing the last major of 2017. A week later, their nightmare in Europe continued with another 5th to 8th exit at Cologne. This team had NA's best IGL, a highly respected veteran Opper, developing stars in Elige and Twists, a veteran leader in Nitro, and a major winning coach. It was unclear what the issue was, and although they'd string back-to-back second places at ESG Mykonos and ESL New York with Nitro at the helm, by the end of the year, it was clear that there were some internal issues within the team. Stanislaw published a statement detailing his repeated clashes with Zeus, as he felt like he was brought into a system that had no room for multiple leaders, and he'd part ways with the team as they picked up the Brazilian steel. But I was saving this conversation for last, because although Stanislaw brought them a couple decent placements, the Liquid curse TM had not gone anywhere. At ESL Pro League Season 5 Online, they had a 14-7 lead against NRG that ended in a 19-22 loss. Against Immortals during the Subaru Invitational 2017, an event I think we all forgot about, they had a 13-8 lead and lost 8 rounds in a row to lose the game 13-16. ESL Pro League, they'd be up 11-4 against NBS and lose 14-16. Dazed was also casting this game, and I've always wondered what happened to that guy. I heard he does a lot of partying nowadays, but the last I saw of him, he was thirst trapping on Twitter. I had to see this, and now you do too. Having a memory is a curse on its own sometimes. Anyway, during the Krakow 2017 major qualifier, they'd actually be down 14-8 against Flipside, come back all the way, battle back and forth to grab match point and double overtime, 1 round away from qualifying for the major, and then lose 3 rounds in a row to bring it to triple overtime and get eliminated from the tournament. Reverse curse on this one. I feel like it's more heartbreaking to be eliminated from major contention by coming back all the way and giving yourself a sense of hope with 3 rounds of match point just to lose anyway. During the DreamHack Malmo 2017 qualifiers, 9 days after being denied a spot at the major, they'd make it all the way to the finals against Renegades, win map 1, and on map 2 blow a 7-round lead, losing in overtime 17-19, which led them to also losing map 3 as well as their spot at DreamHack Masters Malmo. During ECS Season 5 North America in week 1, they'd played Cloud9 and establish a 14-8 lead and lose the game in overtime 15-19. And finally, at the end of the year at ESL Pro League Season 6 finals, they had a 13-7 lead and proceeded to lose the game 14-16. It's surprising that during this event, Liquid looked as competitive as they were, despite having to play with Zeus due to Steel being roster locked into Immortals. And they'd actually take a game against Astralis, who themselves were playing with a sub in Rubino, and managed to choke a 12-6 lead. But the Liquid curse hasn't gone anywhere, so with the new year and a new roster just as 2018 arrives around the corner, there's a chance for Liquid to make a fresh start. The first major of 2018 was back on home soil, this time in Boston. Unfortunately, Liquid's new pickup Steel would not be able to play with the team due to roster lock restrictions, and Zeus would sub in. Not surprisingly, it didn't go great, with them failing to make the playoffs for a second major in a row. America's team brought home NA's first major, and weeks later, Liquid would welcome back NAF, benching JDM and putting IGL Nitro on the primary op position, the same role that they said was too much work for one person back in 2015, with Twists and NAF available to pick up a second op if needed. NAF had been away for a while, with notable spans on both Optic's successful NA lineup and EU lineup, and for the last half of 2017, the Australian Renegades core, a very cursed roster I think everyone forgot about unless you're a diehard fan of Aussie CS. He had won tournaments with both organizations and posted an impressive 1.17 rating in 2017, but there were some questions about his ability to preserve this form against top teams. Over the next few months, it was clear that Naf had settled in, posting great scorelines to win CS Summit 2 and take 3rd and 4th at Star Ladder Season 4 and Iem Katowice. It was also clear, however, that Steel had not settled in as well as Naf. Before a stretch of major offline tournaments, mid-year, Taco signed with Team Liquid to replace Steel, reuniting 2 core pieces from the major dominating Luminosity team. Their first big tournament was less than 2 weeks away at DreamHack Marseille, and expectations were rather high for Team Liquid with Naf on a heater and a clear upgrade in Taco. With clear favorite Astralis, underdog Turkish roster Space Soldiers, and a floundering Gambit in their group, Team Liquid was a clear second place favorite in their group at Marseille. And despite having the easiest group in the draw by far, the new roster fell short against Gambit for the spot in the quarterfinals. With a consistent stretch of Tier 1 lands leading up to the second major of 2018, Liquid had their work cut out for them. They only had a few days of practice with Taco prior to Marseille, and it showed. The next significant land was EPL Season 7 Finals, and although they'd roll every NA team in the regular season, their ability to compete against top European teams was still in doubt by many. After a few weeks of scrims and league matches, including a choke against NRG losing 20-22 after a 15-7 lead, Team Liquid were back at LAN and once again in Astralis' group. They'd fare better this time, passing through the groups, albeit only to the quarterfinals after a 2-0 stomp from Astralis. In the playoff stage, though, we saw a different Liquid as they handily 2-0'd Simples, Na'Vi, and Mouse Sports, both top 5 teams at the time. With strong performances from every player on both maps, this would be Liquid's best chance at a LAN title since ESL New York 2017. And in the first of the many grand finals this year, Liquid met Astralis yet again. Preemptive Liquid Astralis counter on screen. Liquid at this point have lost 16 of 23 maps played against Astralis. No one really expected Liquid to lift the trophy on Sunday, but after a grim 16-1 loss on their own map pick Dust 2, Liquid fans were bracing for yet another collapse against the Danes. Much to the relief of NACS fans, Liquid made it surprisingly close on the next 3 maps, taking Astralis to their limit on every map and even completing a nice comeback down 7-13 on CT side Mirage to extend the series. They did, however, have a lead of 11-5 on Inferno before losing the map 12-16. Regardless though, after the dust settled, analysts and fans were optimistic about Liquid's future. Although they were still looking for their first top tier LAN title, it was clear that in the break since Marseille, Liquid had found a way to win high pressure series against top EU rosters and make games against Astralis look close for the first time ever. And with 4 S-tier tournaments scheduled in the 6 weeks following EPL, it was a good time for Liquid to start hitting form. At Star Series Season 5, they'd fall short 2-1 in the quarterfinals against a burgeoning NRG roster, only to take revenge weeks later at ECS Season 5 finals, beating NRG 2-0 to meet Astralis in the finals. And yet again, despite the series count looking ugly, Team Liquid did take Astralis to 30 rounds on Mirage and strung together a good T-side on Dust 2. We take what we can get these days. At Belo Horizonte, though Liquid made it to the playoffs, they struggled against the Mouse Sports with a stand-in and exited 3rd and 4th after a pretty uncompetitive loss to FaZe. Cologne was even worse. Liquid exited in last place, losing 2-0 to North with a 15-10 lead turning into a 16-19 loss, and even dropping a best of 1 against Tier 2 EU roster Big, who they had stomped in multiple best of 3s at Belo Horizonte. It was clear that despite the work had put into this new roster, they still had weaknesses to resolve before they could consistently compete for titles at major tournaments. Let's pause for a second and talk about practice. Hey Alan, can we talk about practice for a second?
But we talking about practice, man. What are we talking about? Practice?
Okay, I'm gonna talk about practice.
If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
What?
Prior to ECS Season 5 finals, Naf talked to HLTV about Liquid's 2018 form. He attributed their Star Series loss against NRG to a bad veto as they had to play their weakest maps, Train and Nuke. He'd said they worked on their Nuke protocols after that tournament and felt more comfortable going into ECS Season 5, but the interviewer questioned this, asking if adding 1 map to their pool was enough to outlast top EU teams with far deeper map pools and strat books. And with the team in good individual form, Naf declared Liquid to be, quote, at their best and in a prime position to take down Astralis. They did not. They did not take down Astralis. Months after their Cologne disaster, Elige gave a more extended interview detailing Liquid's obstacles. And once again, Team Liquid's preparation was a large theme, as Elige divulged that they didn't feel well prepared coming into Cologne. He echoed Naf's comments about their weaker map pool and cited the busy tournament schedule, as well as busy personal schedules for their poor practice quality and quantity. After their early exit at Belo Horizonte, HLTV interviewed Nitro, who shared sentiments similar to his teammates about their shaky map pool and lack of tactical depth. At the last notable LAN before the August player break, reporters caught Twists and Taco to get their thoughts on Liquid's year. Apart from the same comments on preparation and tactics, the two noted how they'd gotten solid practice in before E-League and felt that Liquid is at 70% of their potential. Despite this, 70% was nowhere near enough to touch Astralis, and for the 3rd time this year, Liquid fell short in the grand finals to Astralis. Now, back then, players had legitimate gripes about the frequency of offline tournaments. During their spring-summer stretch in 2018, Liquid had events basically every other week, sometimes attending massive LAN tournaments in different regions of the world and back-to-back weekends. But it seems odd that tournament in and tournament out, no matter who the player interviewed was, the same reason was given for Liquid's inability to win tournaments. They weren't properly properly prepared. And as busy as the players were that year, it seems the concerted efforts to drill down on specific maps or team issues bore little fruit. After NAF highlighted Nuke and Train as problem picks for Liquid, they'd finished the season 7-8 on Nuke and 1-2 on Train. They went into the player break with Twist and Taco agreeing that they were at 70% of their potential, but look at Liquid's map breakdown for 2018. On land, they played either Inferno or Mirage for 94 out of 189 maps. Basically, more than half of their maps all year were either Inferno or Mirage. Glance at Navi or FaZe's graph, and the eye test clearly hints at why European top teams were so consistently dominant. If you're Liquid, it must be insanely difficult going into tough best-of-3 matchups being truly comfortable on only 1 or 2 maps. On the opposite side, think about how easy it is for Navi or FaZe to prepare for Liquid knowing that you have this much more depth. You have the tactical edge even before connecting to the server. The comparison between Liquid's 2018 and 2019 map pools are even more stark. All this to say, I have to question Liquid's practice during this period. If you're practicing your best and most played maps, why are they sitting at a 55 to 65% win rate all year? And if you're practicing new maps to add to your pick ban pool, why aren't you picking them in vetoes? But I digress. They'd emerged from the player break likely well rested, but the story at Face It London Major was still the same story that they had crafted all year. Good best-of-1 wins against worse teams led them to the Legend stage, and another 3-0 sweep secured their place in the major quarterfinals. Their impressive win was their 2-0 match against Astralis, though impressive feels like a stretch when you consider they barely won the match thanks to NAF's op play and OT, but still a good win for them nonetheless. Also, can you guess what 2 maps they played in the Swiss stage? They'd get a lucky draw for the quarterfinals and play Hellraisers, an obscure CIS team who wasn't even ranked in the top 10 at the time. They'd handily win map 1 Mirage, falter on Dust 2, and luckily take the 3rd map because Hellraisers let Cash through. This was a Pyrrhic victory, and Taco and the squad knew it. Against Astralis, once again, Team Liquid wouldn't be so lucky as Astralis picked map 1 Nuke.
Liquid usually allows Astralis to pick Nuke. Now they've won 17 in a row on Nuke.
This was the first map all tournament where Liquid wasn't playing Mirage, Inferno, or Cash, and by God was it obvious. Liquid looked like a mixed team on stage, and even Astralis were astonished, with Xypnix thinking Team Liquid floated Nuke because they reworked their protocols, only to get the same looks they got months ago. Not even 24 hours ago, HLTV had Dupree saying that this semifinal would be the best match of the major. With only 15 rounds to show in 2 maps, World's number 3 Team Liquid headed back across the pond with another 3rd and 4th finish at a major tournament. They'd also have little time to process with ESL New York the weekend following the major. With home field advantage, Astralis and Navi being absent, and basically only 2 other serious contenders, Liquid still couldn't close it out against Mouse in the finals. Building up a staggering 13-4 lead on map 4 Dust 2, which would have secured them the win on home soil, they managed to stumble and fall right in front of the finish line, losing the map 17-19 in overtime. Then subsequently losing map 5 Mirage, their bread and butter, probably because they were tilted.
Gone. Chris is an op still in the picture. Op still very much in the round. Oh, Chris! He's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God! Chris, the Wolf of Wall Street gets an ace, and it's championship point Mouse Sports.
And although their placement was better than the major, something tells me that this one stung even more, with a visibly distraught Twists being presented as MVP medal despite the loss. And when Taco spoke about it at Epicenter in October, the issue was still the same: not enough time to practice. By the end of October, Liquid had been eliminated 4 times by Astralis at big events, 3 times in the finals, and they had lost 2 more times to Astralis after that at Iem Chicago and ESL Pro League Season 8 finals. Ending the year still possessing the Liquid curse, losing a 12-6 lead to Astralis in the finals of Iem Chicago, and then a 12-5 lead being lost to NRG at ECS Season 6, proving that as far as they've come, they are still Team Liquid. As 2018 came to a close, so did Liquid's Brazilian experiment, with Stewie 2K and Adren coming in for Taco and Zeus. In some ways, the year was a success. Liquid began the year a team always on the cusp of top 10, and undoubtedly ended as one of 2018's 5 best teams. That said, this successful year didn't deliver Team Liquid's first big LAN trophy, only winning CS Summit 2 and Supernova Malta, which were both listed as A-tier events, despite good form from NAF, Twists, and Alish, whom all placed in the top 20 players in the world that year. NAF at number 6 being the highest of the trio that year, they all had amazing years individually, but could never find the form together to close out the big tier 1 tournament they've been missing for so long. I hope you cannot hear the ambulance in the background. The team hoped by bringing in Stewie, one of NA's 5 major winners to that point, he'd provide intangibles, leadership, and big game moments to bring Liquid over the line. At any rate, the year was done and we all declared Astralis the winners of 2018, and Liquid had 2 full months to prepare for their first LAN, the Katowice Major. I hope they get to practice this time. Very conveniently, iBuyPower hosted a small 8-team LAN tournament in California weeks prior to Katowice, so unlike the other iBuyPower events, some pretty impressive teams were in attendance joining Liquid: Astralis, FaZe, and Fnatic. They muscled their way through best of ones in the group stage versus Luminosity and Ghost, and although it went to 3 maps, Liquid's semifinals against Fnatic looked uncompetitive, and they'd ring in the new year with yet another goddamn final against Astralis. Liquid at this point had been playing in their comfort zone, specifically Mirage and Inferno, but after a dire veto against Astralis, they'd be forced to play Dust 2 and Overpass. And things would get even worse when they got rinsed 16-4 on Inferno map 1. Liquid versus Astralis at this point was like David David and Goliath, except it was real life where you can't bring in a slingshot and some stones to kill a 10-foot tall armored giant. Wait, they won? Holy shit. Looking at the stat line, I don't even think it's even easy to tell that this was a 2-1 series win for Liquid. In fact, Astralis seemed to be dominating the early rounds, scoring 16 more First Bloods over the 3-map series. Liquid's mid-game adjustments and tactics, which had previously led them to 10 best-of-3, best-of-5 losses against Astralis the year prior, were solid through the last 2 maps, with crucial multi-kills bringing them over the line time after time again. Even more impressive considering they began Map 2 and Map 3 with huge loss streaks. You can see just how relieved Liquid were after securing the last round on Overpass. More than anything, this was a mental victory for the team. Naf in his MVP interview said as much. With only a few weeks of practice, the new Liquid roster had picked up the org's biggest LAN win yet and came into Katowice ranked number 2 in the world. To this point, this was Liquid's best chance at a major title. At least since Simple was on the team, I guess. Certainly, it was the best fully North American iteration of Team Liquid CSGO we've seen yet. And after the Swiss stages concluded, the world's number 1 and number 2 had swept their matches 3-0. What's more is while Liquid were placed on the harder side of the playoff bracket, they were also on the side opposite to Astralis, meaning that if they played them, it would be in the finals. Remember 3 years ago when Alu declined Liquid's offer for a project in his native Finland? Well, that project was ENCE, and since 2018, he had taken a young group of unknown Finns, including Alexa B, from irrelevance to top 10 in the world. Liquid met ENCE in the quarterfinals, and while the veto seemed quite unfavorable. Considering how stellar Team Liquid has looked and how inexperienced ENCE are against strong competition, it was finally time for Liquid to be the Goliath to ENCE's David. Instead, this match looked more like David versus David because every single one of Liquid's players failed to go positive, while Alu dropped 55 over 2 maps, including 39 op kills. 39! This included a 23 streak on map 2 to come back from an 8-15 deficit, a feeling that Team Liquid was not very unfamiliar with at this point. With Na'Vi, a Team Liquid had 2-0'd in their last 4 best-of-3 matchups, waiting in the semifinals, they couldn't even get close to stumping Alexa B and ENCE, and by Thursday evening, one of their best shots at claiming a major title was lost. As well as they prepared at iBuyPower Masters and their pre-major bootcamp, on the day that mattered most, Liquid did not deserve it. It was the 4th major Team Liquid CSGO had come up short in the playoffs, and especially for long-standing members of Liquid, this one stung just a bit extra.
On that game, we didn't even try, at all. I don't even know if we were, functioning at, 30% or, anything that we're doing.
Of course, it's super disappointing, but I don't want to discredit them winning. Obviously, they played really well. They hit all their shots, and they deserve it. They're here for a reason. Obviously, we didn't deserve the day, and with how we're looking, I don't think we're going to deserve it anytime soon, so.
I wouldn't want to say that, though, because you've got Stewie 2K, and it seems like he's the missing puzzle piece that Liquid have been looking for. So a bit more practice and a bit more working on those new strats with your new coach, Eric. And we could see you beating Astralis one day, don't you think?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we did it a month ago, but of course, with this loss, people are probably going to think that was part of the honeymoon phase, and that was a fluke. We're here to prove that it wasn't a fluke, so. In coming events.
A month later at Blast Sao Paulo, Stewie took a more optimistic tone, foreseeing only a little bit more extra time before Liquid put it all together. At that event, Liquid tied ENCE on the last stage of groups, barely sneaking into the grand finals against Astralis. And on Sunday, while they took the first map off Astralis, Team Liquid looked lost on Inferno and Overpass and really stood no chance. But to be honest, did anyone really stand a chance against Astralis at this point? And despite going perfect in the group stage of Blast Miami, they looked even worse in the finals against FaZe. Nav spoke prior to the event about their map pool woes, the future of which was uncertain, with Vertigo replacing Cash that year. Since the beginning of this year, Liquid were the undisputed number 2 in the world, and back-to-back finals appearances were good improvements, but somewhat expected at this point. Liquid were finally playing quite well, with Elige, Naf, and Twist putting up 1.18s over the first 40 maps of the year. Unfortunately, in the big matches against the most daunting teams, this level faltered quite a bit, and at Iem Sydney, Nitro echoed familiar apprehensions about Liquid's map pool and veto process. Moreover, he detailed the team's work with a sports psychologist, especially after their inability to close out Blast Miami with Astralis eliminated. At this point, there seemed to be a massive wall that locked Liquid out of the grand finals on the stage, regardless of which 5 players sat at the opposite side. With Astralis, Na'Vi, and ENCE absent, as well as FaZe subbing Yanko for Nico due to visa issues, Liquid came into Sydney as heavy favorites, especially with the road to the semifinals, including Boot, Dreamscape, Big, and an aging NiP roster. With solid performances across the board on Mirage and notably Nuke, Liquid beat MIBR 2-0 in the semifinals to secure a finals berth.
Actually make a rotation down here, but 2 frags go the way of Liquid. Just Nitro here.
Cat Cold Zero in the aim duel. Nope. Wow.
I mean, what do you even say about that?
Waiting for them was an on-fire Fnatic, who had beaten compatriots NIP and an in-form NRG roster to reach the finals, which were more importantly, a best-of-5. For nearly a year and a half, Liquid had been entering matches on the back foot, working between events to slowly build out a more robust set of comfortable maps. Another finals appearance, and if they were going to lift that trophy, they'd have to prove themselves on nearly every map in the pool. On Cash, Fnatic jumped out to an early 9-0 lead that proved too strong to overcome. On map 2, Elige broke the late-game stalemate with a 3K, and they were able to snowball this momentum into a 2-0 series lead after Mirage. Fnatic's CT side on Dust 2 was flawless and suffocating, and on the map that Liquid had played last year 50 times, after 10 different finals losses on land, Twists and Liquid put together a textbook map 5 to secure the organization's first Tier 1 LAN trophy.
And it's done finally! Finally, Liquid get their notch on a Grand Slam. The first of 4 they'll go after, the first Tier 1 event, and Stewie is the answer, it turns out, after all.
The year prior, Twists brought home the most depressing MVP award of all time after 5 incredible maps, and at just 19 years old, he took home his second of many, this time with trophy in hand.
And you can forget Blast, you can forget Pro League, you can forget Chicago, you can forget New York, you can forget ECS, forget them all, because IEM is finally Liquid!
Although they'd come up short at CS Summit 4 against a somehow statistically average ZywOo, weeks later they were back on the main stage at DreamHack Dallas, trying to be the first NA roster to dominate at not just a big event, but an entire season. Luckily for them, seasons prior, ESL announced the Intel Grand Slam, a prize that strung a narrative across ESL and DreamHack events. Any team that could win an ESL or DreamHack event and then win 3 of the next 9 after that would be awarded an $1 million prize and gold bars to top it off. Over the latter 8 months of 2018, Astralis had accomplished this feat over many attempts, and in Sydney, Liquid's 9-event clock had technically begun. No one dared mention this when the next scheduled event rolled up in Dallas, least of all the players on Liquid, who were focusing on the fundamentals and big game preparation after a disappointing CS Summit loss. Twists and Elige led the charge out of the groups against the old guard on North and FaZe, comfortably landing a spot in the semifinals. Very favorably, an underperforming Furia roster 2-0'd Vitality on the way to the last semifinal spot. Against the world's number 2, they couldn't maintain that peak, and Liquid cruised to the final. Also, Elige dropped 54 kills and 106 ADR, which probably didn't help Furia.
Smoke. It'll be Elige to try and fight them 1 versus 4, and he's got the first kill. The bomb is right there, so that's right, the only thing going for him. 1 more headshot. They're gonna try and... Oh my God! Elige!
In the finals, it was a rematch of the major quarterfinals against ENCE, and Alu was in very similar form this weekend, posting a 1.25 coming into Sunday. And although he stayed in very similar form, Liquid edged out the win in a grueling 3-map series. Elige took home his first MVP award, and Liquid brought home their second big event trophy for that month after over 3 years of empty cabinets. Elige's interview after the event gave a very telling hint that not only were Liquid here, but they were here to stay. For nearly a year and a half, Liquid had been entering every veto at a disadvantage, and every disappointing exit seemed to revolve around poor preparation and being uncomfortable in the server. The tone and the feeling after Dallas had shifted. Liquid had come into the ENCE matchup with clear plans for the majority of the maps, already comfortable on Inferno and Overpass, with a lot of recent preparation for Nuke and Mirage. Liquid were finally comfortable on the server, and the maps that lost them Katowice clinched Dallas, now the second of 4 events needed for the Grand Slam. Despite their dominance in May, I don't think many of us back then were prepared for the run Liquid was about to go on. In the post-match threads after Dallas, only 2 commenters even mentioned Liquid in the context of the Grand Slam. Most people are just shitposting about Liquid finally not choking. Seems about right, honestly. Just to put in perspective how swiftly it seemed Liquid locked in, a day after Dallas, Liquid were crowned by HLTV the best team in the world, and 2 weeks after that, the best team in the world had to play in the last chance qualifier for Cologne. They weren't even planning on attending Cologne after their first win in Sydney, but after you go back to back, you kinda just have to fucking send it, I guess. The first day of the EPL Season 9 finals, Liquid faltered in a best of 1 against North, but if there's one thing we've learned about number 1 teams that unexpectedly lose to North, it's that they don't tend to continue losing. For the rest of the tournament, Liquid were resigned to play elimination games in the losers bracket. If they were going to lift the trophy on Sunday, they would have to win 6 different matches, including a best of 5 final. After outmatching Tyloo, Liquid struggled to close their next series against Oscar and Hellraisers, requiring a Neuralink flick from Nitro and Hellraisers to contact B through a smoke on round 30. Hours later, Liquid, off the back of Elige's monster performance, cut through a much better MIBR roster like butter. It may not have been pretty, but they snuck through into the quarterfinals, well aware that there was no more room for mistakes. Matched against the world's number 2, Liquid were in for a grueling quarterfinal.
He's the only one here. First shot is his, second shot is his, bomb is his as well, and he's got another one. Stewie just tears them all down. It's Stewie to ignite Team Liquid in the second half.
Everyone knew as much when Astralis quashed their late comeback on Overpass to take map 1. While Liquid evened the series score on Inferno, by the half of map 3, Astralis was up 11-4 and things looked grim. Liquid a year ago in this position would have surely crumbled, whether from poor preparation or the playoff pressure itself. But at the start of the new year, they signed Stewie 2K for a reason, and this map is a prime example of why. With their tournament life on the line and a fairly easy road after Astralis, Stewie picked up the op and dropped 180 R on their heads, including 6 first bloods on the T side alone. Even in rounds where he walked into certain death, he provided massive value, either serving up a lot of damage or securing the first blood before he died. After years of being the chronic choke artists, the ones to bear the Liquid curse, it's clear that in this state they were no longer beaten by the world. They were the world beaters. Left in the semifinals was an overperforming NRG, a struggling French G2 roster, and a young Mouse team still working out the kinks with their new IGL carry. They overwhelmed Mouse in the semis despite Woxic's best efforts, and in the finals against G2, French legends Kenny S and Shox's barely positive scorelines were nowhere near enough to topple Liquid. And perhaps it was Shox and Kenny turning back the clock, or perhaps it was because the final map went into a tense OT, perhaps because we weren't used to seeing Liquid do this well. But in one post-match thread, for Liquid's third consecutive major event, there's only one comment even acknowledging the fact that in less than 8 weeks, Liquid were on the precipice of a Grand Slam. How cathartic it must have been for Elige after months and months of losers interviews and consequent backlash online to declare in his MVP interview that Team Liquid were 100% the best team in the world. They'd face a relatively easy path to the Cologne playoffs, handily defeating NRG and a lesser-known Korean roster on the way to the semifinals. They'd also play a more competitive Navi roster, but how competitive can you be when Zeus and Flamey are canceling out monster performances from Simple? With 3 straight wins on the ESL circuit, Liquid had plenty of time in tournaments to close out the Grand Slam, and Nitro said as much in the group stage interview. The team that consistently spent year after year deflating in high-pressure tournaments were playing unburdened and carefree in their organization's most important CS event to date. With a day's rest, they rematched against Navi on Saturday. Simple and Co stood no chance with Liquid, limiting him to a rare even scoreline, especially with Zeus in his twilight having another terrible performance.
31 seconds. Nitro changes that with the first and the second. Looking so good. He gets a third. Looking for the fourth. Doesn't even matter at this point. Stewie's on it. Nitro's got that point. What a round on the AWP.
Once again, Liquid found themselves in the Grand Slam against a French team struggling to get it together. Barring some flashy plays from Zywoo, Liquid absolutely suffocated Vitality. If you thought Simple had no help, you might want to look away from this scoreline.
As he'd hoped. Twist even gets one at range. Down to just 2. He's got the bomb. He's got armor. This is a straight 1-on-2, but Alex is close. Twist. He baits him out somehow. A third. He has the gun. He's using the deagle. He's got confidence in his name, and he sees it as RPK is found. And Twist shows us all that maple syrup is just another form of liquid. They might not be done yet as RPK gets aggressive, but he's overmissed, he's overlooked and overshot. Now he heads to the site. We know how quick Elige can strike. He's looking to do it again, and he's got Apex down as well. It's back to a 2-on-2. Smoke on his right. Tap on the bomb. Spray through. 8 HP, and Alex is forced to move. Forced to get away, and the smoke's still down. Elige knows he's nowhere else. He has to be there. He is so smart. He clears everything. 3 steps ahead, and he gets championship point for Liquid.
No defuse kit available here. A 2 versus 2, and Liquid have the advantage. They're trying to bring it down to the 2 versus 1. If it's RPK that's dropped, they could be in serious trouble. That should do it. There we go. It's Team Liquid, and that's what it means to them. They've taken it at the 4th map. The favorites coming into the tournament have just unlocked the Intel Grand Slam. That's ESL 1 Cologne under their belt and $1 million bonus.
We don't always remember it so vividly because it happened within the context of the Astralis era, but Liquid at this time were genuinely considered untouchable. The days of the Liquid curse were finally behind them. Well, except for that game against ENCE at Katowice, and a random game against Luminosity Gaming losing 13-16 after being up 11-4, and also losing a map to ENCE at CS Summit 4 where they lost another 11-4 lead on Nuke, as well as a random map against Spirit during the Cologne qualifiers being up 12-7 losing 13-16. Besides all that, they looked phenomenal. But after taking home the Grand Slam so quickly, the community legitimately started questioning if Liquid could win another Grand Slam before the year ended, since there were 5 events that remained on the calendar. This is just how good they were at the time. It really seemed like nothing could stop them. Not even the team that solved Counter-Strike TM, Astralis. Liquid's absolutely disgusting streak continued a week later at Blast LA, where they went 9-0 in map count with a 60+ round count to grab their first Blast title. And then, to start off the next Grand Slam season in Chicago, they dropped 1 map out of 10 on their way to a title, with every single one of their players above 1.15 rating for the tournament. You had Naf going into Blast feeling like Liquid was, quote, above and beyond any other team, and then he dropped a 1.4 and didn't lose a map. You had Elige dropping a 1.41 rating at Chicago, and then resolving that the scene would need a literal break from competition to beat Liquid. Liquid also had the other guys they were beating saying the same thing. It was insane. Everyone went back to the drawing board that August, and Liquid came into Berlin as heavy favorites. The only other team whose odds were even close to Liquid's was Astralis, who hadn't won an event since Sao Paulo in March. They looked awful since then against top teams. But unfortunately, this video is not called the luckiest team in Counter-Strike. The first sign of trouble was their best of one match against NRG, who just out-aimed them on Dust 2 to secure a 2-0 start in the Swiss stage. After falling just short in double OT against Dark Horse of Vanguard, Liquid's backs were against the wall, and Naf lamented the player break's effects on Liquid's individual skill and tactics. By the skin of their teeth, Liquid snuck into the quarterfinals, meeting Astralis yet again.
That would be such a ballsy pick by Astralis to just go straight.
The daring pick is Nuke here. Is to say, listen, forget everything. Oh my God.
Oh, it's happened, the curveball.
They've gone and done it, right?
A new addition to the map pool, Vertigo, and it's here in the quarterfinal.
Elige noted before the match that ultimately it would come down to who could fix their mistakes. And Astralis said, what are mistakes? Like, what are you guys talking about? We had mistakes? You guys had to fix mistakes? Why were you fixing mistakes? What are you fixing mistakes for? Did you not just win like 700 tournaments in a row?
Get this defuse. There's Device, and there's Astralis 16 to 13. They take down Team Liquid, and they're going to be in the semifinals.
8 major appearances in CSGO, 5 playoff appearances, and absolutely no hardware to show for it. This was the team that just won an Intel Grand Slam, $1 million, by the way, in 4 months. A 4-month period bookmarked by 2 5th to 8th places at the majors. These guys were so good at beating top European teams, but they might have been better at losing to Astralis. I'm not kidding. After the Berlin major, Astralis eliminated them 3 more times that year. In the year where Liquid won 7 top-tier LAN titles and the Intel Grand Slam, even Naf was admitting that Astralis was the team of the year. This is because after the player break, Liquid would never win another serious tournament ever again. Ever again. It seems that Liquid have gone back to their old ways. 11 days after Berlin, on my birthday no less, they would lose to a Brazilian team called Sharks, who were ranked 32nd in the world at the time, an incredibly embarrassing loss for a team ranked number 1 in the world. And if that wasn't bad enough, the first map Vertigo was lost after they had a 12-7 lead. Come on, guys. And then they would lose to Astralis again in a close semifinals of New York 2019, and then get eliminated from DreamHack Masters Malmo in second to last place at the hands of the world 28th Greyhound Gaming. After losing another 12-3 lead on Mirage. To Greyhound Gaming, we're losing 12-3 leads on Mirage. Cementing the idea that this team is once again plagued by the Liquid curse and are no longer the best team in the world. Liquid would then drop 2-0 to Fnatic in the quarterfinals of ESL Pro League Season 10. And just when they needed a boost of confidence at the Blast Global Finals, they were once again met face-to-face with major champions Astralis, who send Liquid home early for Christmas with a close 0-2 defeat and another second place behind the greatest team of all time. Liquid would never be the same again after the player break, forever haunted by the curse that seems to do anything to watch them falter. After their heartbreaking loss in Berlin, after what would be considered to some as the greatest stretch of CS in history, after what was one of the highest peaks in Counter-Strike history turned into one of the shortest stints of dominance the game has ever seen. 7 top-tier tournaments won in the span of 2 months, Team Liquid achieved what is still to this day the fastest a team has ever achieved a Grand Slam, and they did it with a style that nobody else could ever replicate. As bittersweet as a year as this was for Liquid, it could have been far worse. But it's all downhill from here because in 2020 there was an entire global shutdown that played a big role in the destruction of this team, but besides Liquid there was an even bigger problem at hand that is still prevalent to this very day: the demise of North American Counter-Strike. We saw North America compete with the top dogs for a very long time, and then for a moment even claim the title of best in the world, but since then NA has struggled immensely to be in any conversation, especially with the top organizations leaving America to explore European and CIS rosters, including Liquid. Which is why the sequel to this video will be a full deep dive into that topic. Stay tuned for that. So anyway, I'm gonna call it there. You don't gotta subscribe if you don't want to, but if you did, thank you. I really appreciate you if you watched this far regardless, and let me know if I got anything wrong with this video and what kind of stuff you'd want to see me cover in the future, or if you have any suggestions on how I could make these videos better. I do actually read all of my comments, so write me anything and I will definitely see it, even if it's really rude and makes me kind of sad. I promise I will unfortunately see it. If you watched this far and are hearing this, I want to thank you specifically for watching the video and not those other guys who didn't watch till the end. Yuck. Imagine not supporting your favorite creator. But seriously, thank you for choosing my video instead of all the other videos you could have chosen. You should check out my other videos. I got sort of similar stuff, or you could just watch them all. That'd be pretty cool. But either way, I'll see you in the next one. See ya.